Well, hi, good morning, and welcome to this another edition of the Cooperative Voice program. I'm your host, Phoenix Belfield, and it's a real pleasure to be able to speak to you this morning. And today we'll be talking a little bit about governance. We'll be looking at the governance from the credit union perspective. Uh, this is a time in which we would normally be holding our AGMs, and we will be having a few AGMs in this month. In April, a little lower down, we'll be announcing those dates. And you would have been seeing the notices of the AGM, of the annual general meetings for the credit unions. And some of you might see that there are vacancy announcements, vacancies on the different committees. And you might be saying to yourself that you want to be part of the volunteerism. You want to volunteer on one of the committees, you want to be on the board, supervisory and compliance committee, or the credit committee for that matter of fact. And so today we'll be talking a little bit about the duties and responsibilities of the board of directors, because a lot of persons have been asking us, what essentially does the board do? How can I play a part in the governance infrastructure of the credit union? So we're going to talk a little bit about the responsibilities of the board of directors for the credit union. So I want you to stay tuned. We'll be talking a little bit more about that, and then once we're break with that, then we'll be talking with one of our guests who is going to explain, who is currently a sitting board member, and we're going to be explaining a couple of things relating to that. So just sit back and listen. We'll take a short commercial break, and we'll be right back. Remember, this edition of the Cooperative Voice program is brought to you with the kind compliments of the Dominica Cooperative Societies League Limited in collaboration with the Credit Unions of Dominica and M. Lajan Mobile Wallet. All right, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Send me money. Send me money. Receive money. Receive money. Send me money. No more hassle. M l'argent. Send me money. Send me money. Receive money. Receive money. M l'argent. It's safe and secure. M l'argent. You want to send your money to friends and family. No more standing in line. M l'argent. It's a new digital financial service brought to you by the Dominica Credit Union Movement. Introduces a new wallet solution, M l'argent. Top up friends, pay bills, make shopping easy, extra secure. Sign up is absolutely free. M l'argent. You want to send your money to friends and family. No more standing in line. M l'argent. Download the M l'argent app today. See your credit union for more details. M l'argent, your mobile payment solution. M l'argent.
All right, welcome back to this another edition of the Cooperative Voice program. I'm your host, Phoenix Belfield, and today we're continuing the conversation on volunteerism. We're speaking a little bit about the different committees of the board, different committees of management of the credit union, namely the board of directors, the supervising compliance committee, and also the credit committee. And so today I have a few guests with me who are also volunteers themselves, and we'll be speaking about the respective committee. So now I'm joined live by Mrs. Josephine Dublin, who is also the president of the National Cooperative Credit Union. Mrs. Dublin, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Belfield, and good morning to your viewing and listening public.
All right, so we've been talking a little bit about volunteerism. We're speaking about the role and responsibility of the volunteers of the credit union. And as the president of NCCU and a member of the board of directors of NCCU, what do you consider to be the critical responsibility for the board of directors?
Essentially, I would say that one would really be understanding all the laws relevant to the credit union. Also, to really be knowledgeable of and be committed to the credit union principles.
Right.
This, what would also be very helpful would be having a certain level of familiarity with asset liability management and also with lending and other policies of the credit union. One should basically be able to read and interpret financial statements and understand all the laws governing the credit union. It sounds, a little, but it's really a mammoth task.
Now, you speak about understanding the act, the bylaws, and so forth, the credit union. We've heard from time to time a lot of persons, particularly those attending the annual general meetings of the credit unions for the first time, complaining that they see the description of the credit of the board of directors, they hear it, but then when they get on the board of directors, it's a whole different story. They're asked to read a lot of documents, and some of them being very technical, having to have certain prerequisite knowledge and understanding in terms of, you said, financial interpretation. How do you see the role of the board being so important in terms of the management of the affairs of the credit union, overseeing the management as well as the other committees? How important do you see the role and responsibility of the board of directors, and what advice would you give to those seeking to be part of the governance structure of the credit union?
Well, essentially, the board of directors is really part of the management of the credit union.
Mm-hmm.
And the credit union is not just, what it used to be long ago, maybe a simple cooperative society. But because of the fact that credit unions are doing a lot of providing rather a lot of financial services to its members,
Mm-hmm.
then therefore they are part, after the general membership, would be the decision-making authority.
Right.
And they are the board members, or the board, and let me say not the members, but the board in its entirety is responsible for directing and controlling the affairs of the credit union. And therefore, the board must provide effective and efficient management of the operations of the society, because it's the board that approves policies. So therefore, the board has to be able to assess the conditions of the society. They cannot be totally reliant on the operational management to interpret things like the financial statements for them. And that is why it may seem a little wieldy sometimes that they have all those documents to read. But it's by having that kind of knowledge and familiarity that they'll be able to function better. So the board should really be independent and should be able to question management. And therefore, every director must fully understand his or her duties and responsibilities.
Now, in terms of the separation of board and management, understanding where that demarcation line is between boards. And ideally, you want to have what we call balanced boards, a knowledgeable board, knowledgeable and assertive management. How do you see the fine dance of that line in terms of board knowing what it is ultimately responsible for doing, and the management of that credit union knowing with them interlocking but not overstepping?
It can be a very fine line, and usually the line can be blurred where one party or the other does not fully understand its role. And this is why, again, I go back to the previous question that you asked, that maybe volunteers find that they have so much reading to do, because really we may come in there and may want to get involved in all the operational activities. But this is why in most credit unions, these people we have paid functionaries for that. However, since the direction is set by the board, the policies are set by the board, then there should be a kind of back and forth between the operational and the legal management, in the sense that operation management should provide the board, the policymakers, with adequate information so that the correct decisions can be made.
And adequate and also timely. One of the things we looked at when we look at Article 53.4 of the Cooperative Societies Act 2 of the revised laws of the Commonwealth of Dominica, it speaks to the prerequisites by which an officer may become part of the governance infrastructure of a credit union. And it highlights quite a few of them in terms of, you must be part, you must have done business within 12 months, you must not have declared bankrupt or made an arrangement with creditors and all of that. But even when you satisfy those criteria, you still need to come knowing and understanding the role of the board, and how do you understand the reports that management is presenting for you, how do you capsulate, how do you frame your experiences being on the board, and how much it has changed your professional life when you speak in the context of management?
Certainly, nobody comes totally prepared for the task at hand. However, I have found that generally the operational management in onboarding the board provides a lot of the documents, the laws, and it is really up to the member to ensure that he or she, does the reading. Of course, you can
Hmm.
say when you go through all these laws and the bylaws, the act, and other, well, when you have new laws like your AML and so on, it can be very taxing on an individual. But let's look at it. We are already managing a financial institution. And in this day and age, you cannot allow errors to be made. So over the years, we've learned, sometimes in very negative ways when maybe some errors do occur. But at other times, I think we've looked on those as learning opportunities. And this is why we are saying persons who seek to come to the board should not come, let us say, for any personal reasons or because they have an axe to grind with the credit union. One should really come to the board with a certain level of willingness to serve, okay, and be prepared to learn. The basic things that one could already have for, I said, would be being able to read and interpret the financial statements. The laws governing the credit union, we should know that. Um, and more importantly, the principles of the credit union, of cooperativism, because this in a way would kind of guide one as to how certain decisions can be made. Also, the board in some ways has to oversee, let us say, some of the work of the other committees and our lending policies. We need to know how we do our lending so that we can provide that kind of support. What is even more important is the ability to work as a team. Very often you find that people tend to leave everything to the chairperson. And my experience has been that I am the chairperson. Outside of the board, the chairperson has no authority, if you want to put it that way. And the full authority of the chair is when it is done, whatever is done in concert with the full board. And this is why they have persons who want to, be volunteers must be able to commit sufficient time so that they can successfully complete their job, the job responsibilities and also the duties. And with sufficient time, by law, the board is due to meet every month. Please ensure, therefore, that if you really commit yourself, that you are committing to attend those monthly meetings. It's within the context of those meetings that the work of the board is done. It's also, well, the board has to get involved together, as I said, with the operational management. It's the board that would approve the policies, the financial statements, the annual budgets, the business plans. So one should have a certain, if a spattering of knowledge of those. And really, it is the task of the board to work with management to develop like short and long range planning, based on the objectives that meet your members' needs and that reflect the philosophy also of the credit union to assure the safety and soundness of members' assets. And therefore, it really means that persons who offer themselves for as volunteers really should be keep current on all matters and continue to develop themselves.
Thank you, Mrs. Dublin, for that exciting and educating information as it relates to the governance and the board of directors. So, colleagues, there you have it, Mrs. Josephine Dublin, who have been presenting to us really a nice, concise nutshell about what's the role and responsibility of the board of directors. And in the subsequent program, we'll be speaking about the Supervisory and Compliance Committee as well as the Credit Committee. We'll also be announcing via our Facebook page. You can go to our Facebook page at DCSLL, and you'll be getting some more information relating to when the credit unions are going to be hosting their respective annual general meetings and how you can be part of that gathering. Very important gathering where the membership get to meet with the board of directors and the other volunteers and to ask them questions relating to their stewardship of the business of the credit union. So until then, thank you very much for joining this edition of the Cooperative Voice program. Again, I'm your host, Phoenix Belfield, and I want to wish you a great rest of the week, a great rest of the day, and to ask you to stay safe and to continue to join us on our Cooperative Voice program. And if you're not a member of a credit union, you can feel free to join anyone. If you're having any difficulty, you can reach out to us at the league or through MLAJA, your choice, and we'll be happy to give you some information going forward. So thank you very much for your assistance, and thank you very much for supporting the program. Again, we're happy for those who make it a success, our partners. We thank you for joining us. And until then, stay safe. Join us next week on another edition of the Cooperative Voice program. We'll be having different content at the same time. All right. Until then, take care, Dominica World. Good morning.